So with that said, Jamey, give me the top 3 priorities.
Yeah, I was thinking about that before the show started. Obviously, Tracy's going to be 1 just because he's going to be a starting running back for the rest of the season. I think I'm going to put Zonovan Knight 2 just because you can use him for this week as a potential number 2 running back, especially with what the running back position looks like. And then 3, I'm going to go back to something I did last week, which did not work out as well, but I think it will this week, just based on the matchup, is the Rams DST. You get them for a 1-week situation against potentially Tyler Shuck, or it could be a struggling Spencer Rattler, but they're at home and they're the number 1 DST to add, and most likely the number 1 DST to use this week.
All right, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Zonovan Knight facing Dallas, and the Rams facing the New Orleans Saints. We still don't know who their quarterback's going to be. Dave, how about you? Give me the top priorities.
Tracy's number 1. It's just a huge opportunity potentially for the rest of the year. You don't see a lot of running backs with this type of opportunity available off the waiver wire. I think it comes down to, and we've heard this line before on the show, what do you need? Do you need a running back badly for week number 9? Do you have a running back that's on bye in week number 9 and you can't get your hands on Tyrone Tracy? I think for 1 week, Zonovan Knight would be that guy. So I guess he would be the second guy. But if you don't need a running back that badly, Troy Franklin is still out there in 38% of leagues. He was excellent last week. Just absolutely bounced back after a very up and down performance in week number 7. And then there's guys that might be okay rest of season. The Tyjae Spears, the Shimray DKs, Christian Watson's going to be pretty popular. But I think it comes down to what you need. If you need a DST, then the Rams make a ton of sense. If you need a quarterback, you can look for one of the guys that's mostly owned, but Trevor Lawrence gets the Raiders. It's a pretty good matchup. He's available in half the leagues. His receivers should be healthy. It really comes down to just what do you need after you put in your claim for Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind taking a chance on a guy who's been pretty bad this year, but Kyler Murray, if he's playing against the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. Cowboys have given us a top 12 quarterback every single week against them. You know, it's without fail that you would have to, who was it, Jaden Daniels got hurt in that game? If you combine Daniels and Mariota that week, they would have been top 12. So it's a little bit, Aizer statty. But yeah, just a lot of guys out there.
You just say opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Have given you.
There you go. They were opposing quarterbacks have been top 12 against the Cowboys.
I have to write that several times a year. So.
Yeah, sure. Hey, listen, Troy Franklin, we were doing some Cortland Sutton research on Beyond the Box Score yesterday. Troy Franklin has 2 fewer targets than Cortland Sutton. These are the red zone targets for the Broncos. Troy Franklin has 12. Cortland Sutton has 5. In the green zone, Troy Franklin has 6. Cortland Sutton has 3, and they have the same amount of end zone targets. He's very involved in important parts of the field. It's not a perfect player, obviously. He's very up and down, but
the thing that's frustrating about Franklin is they get the Texans this week in the 1 week that Marvin Mims may not play, which will only help Franklin just a smidge, but it would help him. And then they come back and their schedule gets great. And so the thing that I fear is that Franklin's got 18 targets the last 2 weeks. They struggle to throw the ball, especially because they're going on the road where Bo Nix hasn't been as good. And then people drop him. And then you're spending too much fab on the wrong week for him.
Yeah.
So if you get him, you got to hang on to him.
Exactly. Like,
looking for commitment here.
If you get him, don't get frustrated and drop him after this. But look, like you said, he's not a perfect player. The touchdown 2 games ago against the Giants was fluky. I thought he would have a good game against the Cowboys this week. I know he kind of went back and forth on Mims versus Franklin, and Franklin clearly had the big game. It's just a matter of like, will they be consistent? These guys, especially when the matchup's a little bit tougher.
And then what if Travis Hunter were out there? If you were going Travis Hunter versus Tyrone Tracy, what do you think?
I think Dave said it best. That kind of comes down to what you need, so I would probably prioritize Tracy just because I don't know if Hunter's great game is going to carry over. Now, there is some thought, obviously, to him building off that. He's a rookie wide receiver going into his bye week, and so you'd love to see what you saw as great game bye week and then come out of it playing well. Will they move him around a little bit more or just keep him in one spot? You did get the Diana Rossini report from The Athletic that the Jaguars are listening to offers for Brian Thomas Jr. I don't think they would trade him. That would be crazy, but still that's out there. So they both have the chance to be very solid rest of season. It's just a matter, I think, what it comes down to. In terms of just player, I probably would rather have Hunter, but situation, I'd rather have Tracy.
I'm going to give you just one more player that I want to highlight real quick. Then we'll talk about Fab. It's Sam Darnold. Now, we always know the problem with Sam Darnold. They're facing the Commanders, and you figure they might be able to, let's see if Jaden Daniels plays, but they might be able to just run the ball. Commanders have a good run defense, but they don't throw a lot. Well, the Commanders, at least going into last night, and I'm guessing it's the same, the Commanders were giving up the most yards per attempt in the NFL. And Sam Darnold leads the NFL in yards per attempt. And Mahomes threw 34 passes last night. But before that, you had Jordan Love, Geno Smith, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, and Dak Prescott all have good games.
22 plus fantasy points.
Yeah, and none of them threw more than 31 passes. So it's just
they lost their best pass rusher prior to last week.
They did. It's just a really bad pass defense, and Darnold is so efficient that he might not have to throw that much. He might be able to do well even.
He's my number one quarterback to add for this week. It's not for this week, but it's not just for this week. His upcoming schedule is also very good. So like to compare him and Lawrence's schedule gets really brutal after this week. So those are the top two guys to go get. But if you're going to prioritize one quarterback for me, it would be Darnold based on what he's done and what he hopefully should be able to do. All
right. We are on CBS Sports Network at 1 p.m. Eastern. So hop on over there. Watch us live. You can see the show on YouTube, youtube.com/fantasyfootball today after the fact. And I don't know if that one's going to be in the live tab, but if you ever want to see one of our shows that you missed, click the live tab if you can't find it, and you'll get the full-length shows. All right. Anyway, and we'll be reading your questions on CBS Sports Network. So how much fab, Dave, are we talking here for Tyrone Tracy? And then we'll talk about the rest.
If you need a running back bad enough, you're struggling in your league, you're 4-4, 3-5, it's time to empty the clip.
Compare him to, I was thinking about it, who do I think Tyrone Tracy might be like rest of season in terms of fantasy production? I was thinking maybe like a Ken Walker.
I'd say Jaylen Warren.
I hope so. That's a pretty consistent, reliable RB2. And then you think to yourself, with Jaylen Warren around my waiver wire, how much would I spend? And I'd spend a lot to get that. So, all right, you're thinking Jaylen Warren. Jamey, how about you? Give me a Tyrone Tracy comp just in terms of fantasy production.
I think, we talked about this yesterday on, the early waiver wire. It was, I think, unfortunately, it's going to be somewhere along the lines like a better version of Tony Pollard and Chase Brown at his worst. And I think Ken Walker's a good one. Guys that you hope are going to play well, have the opportunity to dominate touches, but don't necessarily produce like we want. So I thought what you said yesterday was apropos, that what he did at the end of last season was 14.5 PPR points or more in 3 of his last 6 games. But this is a better Giants offense, and so with Andrew Thomas there and what Scatterboo has done. So Scatterboo since week 2 has been 13 PPR points or more in every game. Can he get to that? Sure. If he does, then he's Jaylen Warren plus, so it's there's a lot to like about this situation. I just don't know if he'll produce like Scatterboo. So I would probably lower it to like around 11. So, basically a 2-point difference. And yeah, that puts him better than those guys because Chase Brown was inconsistent. Tony Pollard obviously was a disaster, so he's in that low end number 2, high end flex range, and you're probably going to start him more weeks than not.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Scatterboo was RB7 per game since the Tracy injury or since week 3. Going into the Philadelphia game, he's such a good touchdown scorer. We can't expect Tracy to be that good. My concern, and we'll move on because I don't want to spend the whole show on Tracy, but my concern, I talked about this with you, Dave, yesterday, is, I don't know that he's going to be the short yardage / goal line back. I have no idea. I mean, when he was healthy earlier this year, it was Cam Scatterboo. They might use Singletary there. Last year, after Singletary came back from injury, it was a pretty even split. Not a lot of carries between the two of them from the 3-yard line or closer, but I think it was like Singletary had one more, or Tracy had one more, whatever it was. But I just want to throw that out there because that could be Singletary's role.
It's also been Jackson Dart's role at times.
True. And then, of course, there's the 5 fumbles from Tracy last year. So not a perfect prospect. He only lost 2 of them, but he fumbled 5 times. But
it's not a bad idea in deeper leagues to pick up Singletary.
Yeah. All right. But look, this is an opportunity to get a running back. Now, let me ask you this. Is he that much better than Trey Benson? Just to add right now?
I think I'd
probably rather have Benson rest of season than Tracy, even though we've seen Tracy do this.
We've seen Benson do it a little bit, not as much as Tracy, but
okay.
I feel like it's a little bit better of an opportunity for Benson eventually. The problem is that Benson's only available in like a third of CBS leagues right now.
Well, he's 55% rostered on Yahoo. So a lot of people out there and ESPN and Yahoo are usually pretty similar I'll check that for Trey Benson.
So
Have
if you
this
need the
choice.
running back, if you need a running back this week, you can't use Benson. He's not eligible to play. He can come back as soon as week 10. And I'd rather have Benson than Tracy rest of season.
The one thing just to keep in mind is we have not heard a timeline for Benson. Hopefully we do this week with Arizona coming back from their bye and somebody will ask about it. And there's some questions I'm seeing in the chat right now. So they released Michael Carter yesterday. The Cardinals did. The ESPN writer for the Cardinals said that this could just be a procedural move, that they're going to bring him back. So just keep that in mind. DeMercado was injured going into their bye week. They used Dearness Johnson. So there's a lot of things at play here. I think just if you're talking about short-term versus long-term, and you have the ability to do so on other sites, is if you could pick up both Knight and Benson, and then you just sort of use Knight this week, and then Benson hopefully when he's ready to play. But again, when he got hurt, it was considered a 4 to 6 week injury, and this will now be week 5, but week 4 from a game perspective when they placed him on IR. So I would hope that he's trending in the direction of playing in week 10 when he's eligible to return.
Okay, I would hope so, but because we don't know that, it might make you lean Tyrone Tracy, which would be understandable if they were both coming back this week, or even if we knew Benson was coming back next week. I think you hear our guys would favor Trey Benson, but we don't know. It could be longer than that for Benson. All right, are you spending more than $5 in FAB for anyone else this week? $5 of your original, 5% of your original budget.
I think it just comes down to what you need. And like Dave said, we're at the point in the season where you have to sort of save yourself a little bit. And so it doesn't do you any good to go into week 10 with the majority of your FAB. So depends on what you need and what's out there. You have 2 pretty prominent quarterbacks not playing this week, 3 if you want to throw in Justin Fields, but without Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield, that position could be of need. So you might need to spend a little bit more there. Tight end really is not anybody that jumps off the page, for this week in particular. Now, if you want to get Fannin or Njoku or Taylor for the upcoming weeks, or as you said, Adam, if Gadsden's available, that's a different story. But I think just in terms of like our criteria, Colston Loveland and Juwan Johnson aren't exactly break the bank type of guys. And then at receiver, it's kind of been the same story all season long. So Franklin in a great spot. He's been one of these guys already, that we talked about. He was one of these guys we said earlier this season to add.
Week 2.
So yeah, it's just one of those spots. Like you can let somebody else spend on Franklin and you get DK. You can let somebody else spend on those 2 guys and then go get Trey Tucker or go get a Darius Slayton or go get another player that could just sort of fill that 8 to 12 point per game range, maybe more. Christian Watson, Josh Downs, these guys have been, in a good spot now for Watson or been in a good spot for Downs. Like there's just so many guys at that position that you don't want to necessarily waste the FAB on, which is kind of what I was getting at with Franklin earlier. Like you may spend too much on him this week. He disappoints you because it's the Texans, and then somebody else picks him up because you're frustrated and you drop him, and then he comes back in week 10 and has a great game.
Let me amend your question, Adam. How many players would I spend more than 10% of my FAB on? And I think the answer is 1. It's Tracy. And again, like if Gadsden's out there, Travis Hunter's out there, obviously you're going to spend a little bit more than that. But Zonovan Knight and all the receivers we've talked about, Tyjae Spears, like maybe between 5 to 10%, but not a huge break the bank unless it's just one of these deep leagues where there's nobody on waivers and somehow, some way, these guys are there.
Yeah,
I do think you make a case for Knight though, just because of his
1 week rental. Sure,
1 week opportunity. Like he could be the guy that helps you win a week.
Yeah, but the thing is, it could be more than 1 week. The problem is for Knight is next week is Seattle, and they have the best run defense in football. He could catch some passes. Like Trey Benson had 5 catches against Seattle that was Benson's only game without James Conner before he got injured. It was 8 carries for 35 yards, 5 catches, 19 yards. But if Knight had 2 really good matchups, because again, we can't guarantee Benson's coming back in week 10, it'd be one thing, but he has a great matchup this week. Zonovan Knight, Cowboys are 31st against running backs. Then he has Seattle, and they give up a lot of receiving stuff to running backs, but they are so good against the run. It's insane. So that's something to keep in mind.
I wouldn't even look at it though as a 2-week thing. I'd look at it as, can he help me win a week? And if that's the case, I'll spend a little bit more for him.
I'm going to just read a few questions here from the chat. Tracy or Woody Marks rest of season?
You asked this yesterday on FFT Express. I think if we were going to this knowing that Nick Chubb was out of the way, it would be Marks easily. But I'm going to go Tracy just because of his potential for touches.
I'll say Marks.
Would you drop Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt for Tracy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Charbonnet or Zonovan Knight?
Charbonnet.
Charbonnet rest of season.
Would you drop Quentin Johnston for Tracy?
Probably.
Yeah. If I'm good at wide receiver, I guess I would.
And then Franklinstein, little team name Tuesday here for Troy Franklin. That's good. And it's thematic. It's Halloween week.
I think he got bar mitzvah too, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I started watching Candyman. I've never seen the original Candyman. It's pretty good. Looking forward to finishing that one, hopefully tonight.